Hello! Are you or someone that you know suffering from a powerful authoritarian government that is led by an evil dictator that is usually fat while there are millions of other people that are starving? Have you recently gone to the grocery store and discovered that all of the basic essentials to survive are gone? Are you sad that you can't compete in the market because the government says it is bad, and you also can't own your own property because the property belongs to the people? Then you may be suffering with communism, the worst ideology in the world that has been tried and failed every single time.
But Kyle, that's not real communism. It's not real.
Shut up. Yes, it has. Another side effect of communism is for kids in capitalist countries like the United States, where they have iPhones and Burger King and competition, along with money that's worth something, a democracy that is still good, and we can elect different leaders every 4 years, unlike in communist countries where they just keep the same leader forever. Complain about how terrible capitalism is, even though they have never even lived under a communist regime. The only way to rid yourself of this communism is with freedom, and maybe reading some history about past failed communist states, because there are a lot of them. Freedom has been proven to help a country get rid of communism, as when a country gets just a little taste of freedom, the communist government usually falls, like it does every single time, because communism sucks. What's going on, everybody? It's Kyle Dockery with the Dockery Docket. We are here with our very 74th episode of the Dockery Docket. I'm excited to be here, and I hope that you are excited to be here as well. So, growing up, if there was one word that my dad considered to be terrible and didn't want us kids to say, it was the word suck or sucks. For this episode, however, I can guarantee to you that he would agree with me when I say that communism sucks. There is no other way around it. It is a terrible ideology that has failed every single time it has been tried. It has killed millions and millions of people, held people down in poverty more than any other economic system on the planet. It's garbage, and any country that tries to implement it is signing their own death warrant. It is honestly that simple. There will always be people or arguments on the left that will say things like, "Oh, you stupid conservatives, you don't even know what communism or socialism is. You are so stupid." Well, let me enlighten you for a moment. As looking throughout history, I believe I can define both very well. Communism is a far leftist social and economic ideology that is usually led by a greedy dictator that, when the power is given to him, decides to rid the people of their power and also of their freedom. Elections no longer count. Human rights no longer count. And more than likely, it leads to mass starvation, mass graves, and mass torture on the people, while the dictators live in luxury. Socialism, on the other hand, is just this same definition, just in a less extreme way, as socialism is the gateway to communism. If you don't agree with me and my definition, that's 100% okay. But I would like you to go look at some history, and you can take a good long look at the Soviet Union under Stalin. You can also look at China under Mao Zedong, and if you want an even more recent example, you can look at Venezuela under Maduro. It is a fact that communism, along with socialism, has been tried all over the world, and has failed in a fireball of misery. As if we look at history, we can see the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, Albania, Poland, Vietnam, Bulgaria, Romania, Czechoslovakia, North Korea, Hungary, China, East Germany, Cuba, Tanzania, Laos, South Yemen, Somalia, the Congo, Ethiopia, Cambodia, Angola, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And now some leftists will jump out and say, what about Vietnam? They are successful, right? Well, the truth is Vietnam is becoming more capitalistic as time goes on, which has made them actually more successful. Then leftists may think, well, China is really rich. They are an ideal society for communism. China also adapted more communist policies that stimulated the economy and allowed China to boom. Venezuela also used to be a very successful country. Then in a snap, the country literally collapsed and is now facing a large inflation crisis with millions of people starving to death. The only country that I can see being successful, quote unquote, with communism is North Korea, as they have basically followed my definition of communism to a T. A dictatorship, and where there is literally no freedom or any human rights. Everything is run into the ground by the government, and grocery stores are empty while the leaders are fat. The reason that I'm talking about all this communism stuff is because there is something that is happening right next door to America. As recently, it looks like the people of Cuba have finally woken up and realized that the communist regime that has been in control of the country for decades has failed. The people decided to take these issues into their own hands, as hundreds of thousands of people came out to protest the government, as they are angry that there are long lines, shortages of food and medicines, as long as repeated electricity outages. The people are sick and tired of this, and according to these protesters, it is time for change. So while these people were protesting, the government of Cuba was not very happy about this, as the protests continued to get out of hand for the communist government. People were starting to post radical things on social media like freedom, or they were playing a video of what was happening on the streets, or people were using social media to tell others where they were protesting. The government, in its totalitarian way, had to prevent other people from doing this sort of thing. There can be no freedom on the internet, so the government decided to shut down the internet. This has been done in countries like China, North Korea. It's just a simple communist tactic to censor your people. And what was happening was, as these people were protesting, they were posting different pictures online, and a lot of people were seeing this in Florida, in America, and in other countries, and they were starting to support the protesters. And the Cuban government did not like that. So the Cuban government blocked apps like Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Telegram. And I believe that a lot of the internet access has been shut off, as there have been politicians from Florida that have been trying to say, hey, we could give Cuba our internet access so then we can know what's going on the island. Which could be a possibility, we just don't know yet. However, there's been more that the government has been trying to do to stop these people from protesting communism. As there was a social media activist named Dina Starr that was extremely critical of the Cuban government. She was doing a live interview for a news report in Spain when Starr's friend walked in and said that the police were outside. She then gets up and goes out and talks to the police. Then after that, she comes back in and says that they are taking her to the station to be questioned. The last thing that she said on the newscast was, "I make the government responsible for whatever happens to me." Now, at this moment, we are not sure if the government is going to kill her, and hopefully this is not the case. However, we do know that the government of Cuba has arrested over 200 protesters, and the government isn't really open about where they are. So there's a possibility that these people will just, magically disappear, like they have in other communist countries. Or maybe they'll be sent to some re-education camp, or worse, a gulag. We may never know. These tactics try to prevent people from speaking out against the government, as if they do, then they may be arrested, or they could even be shot and killed. This happened on Monday, as a 36-year-old man was confirmed dead by police after there was some back and forth between the protesters and the police. The police have claimed that these protesters were destroying property, setting houses on fire, and damaging power lines. The police also claim that the protesters attacked the police officers, which may have led to the shooting of this man. It may have been self-defense. We just don't know yet. And we may never know because the communist government loves to hide information like that. All of this truly makes me proud that we live in America and that we are able to protest peacefully. Yes, as you know, I have been very critical of the Black Lives Matter protests, but I couldn't imagine for 1 minute an American police officer shooting a gun randomly at a protester and killing them. It would shock our country, and it would be viewed as unacceptable because it definitely is, especially while people are peacefully protesting. Rubber bullets may hurt, but they are a lot better than real bullets. Pepper spray might hurt your eyes a little bit, but it is a lot better than actual live rounds of gunfire coming at you. And all of this is just showing us that Cuba is slowly starting to lose control of their government and also their people. There are more issues on this island more than just communism, as in Cuba, the cases of COVID-19 are starting to rise. In fact, some people are claiming that the only reason that the people are protesting is not because of the evils of communism, but just because of COVID-19. As on Twitter recently, there was a hashtag that was trending called SOS Cuba, and underneath that hashtag, there was a little message that explained what the hashtag was all about. And it said, people are hoping to spread awareness on the impact of COVID-19 in Cuba as cases hit an all-time high. While this is true, they are missing a big piece of the problem: communism. There was a tweet from Julie Chung, who is the acting assistant director for the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Western Affairs, that read, "Peaceful protests are growing in Cuba as the Cuban people exercise their right to peacefully assemble to express concerns about rising COVID cases/deaths and medicine shortages." Once again, it is important to talk about the COVID-19 cases, but that is only one of the reasons why they are protesting. But the main issue and the main reason that they are protesting is because of communism and the authoritarian government. Later on in that day, Dan Crenshaw responded to this tweet by saying, "No, they are chanting Libertad, which means liberty in Spanish." He continues by saying, "Stop playing cover for communists and support the Cuban people." This brings up a very good question. Are Democrats defending the communists in Cuba? Definitely not all of them, but some of them definitely are, especially the socialist members of the Democratic Party, as they continue to spread false information about the reason why the Cuban people are protesting the government. As yes, once again, we go back to Twitter, as the Democratic Socialists of America, which has AOC and Rashida Tlaib as members, tweeted out, "DSA stands with the Cuban people and the revolution in this movement and of the unrest and the blockade." What is this blockade? Well, it is referring to an embargo that the United States put on Cuba back in 1962, which prevented American businesses with commercial activities in the United States from conducting trade with Cuban interests. It is also important to remember that in 1962, Cuba had missiles pointed at the United States. That was the whole reason that this started. Many politicians have claimed that this is the reason that Cuba has failed. Not because of communism, but because the United States has been refusing to give them money for such a long time. This belief was also spread by Bernie Sanders, our favorite socialist. As he wrote in a tweet, "All people have the right to protest and to live in a democratic society. I call on the Cuban government to respect the opposition's rights and refrain from violence. It's long past time to end the unilateral U.S. embargo on Cuba, which has only hurt, not helped the Cuban people." This embargo claim is just shifting blame from the communist evil government to the United States, because apparently the United States is just the worst country ever. Now, there may be a case in the future that can be made that the embargo does need to end. I mean, 1962 was a long time ago. However, the issue with this theory is that if the people of Cuba were so angry about the sanctions that came from America, then they would be mad at America, right? They would want nothing to do with America at all. And the Cuban people would probably support the government in trying to stop America from coming in. However, whenever they show the people of Cuba protesting, they of course have the Cuban flag, and they also have the American flag with them. This is because they want to be like America. They want freedom away from this evil communist regime that has been in charge for so long. We know for a fact that the people of Cuba that are protesting right now are chanting things like liberty, down with the dictatorship, and fatherland and life, which is a twist on the revolutionary slogan, fatherland and death. There is nothing that they are chanting talking about the United States or the embargo or the sanctions. They are not calling out the United States, but they are calling on the United States to help them defeat the government and free the people, aka they are fighting communism. This leads us to another great question. Will the government of the United States actually call out communism? Well, this question is very interesting, as in the beginning of the week, in a press conference, Peter Doocy, a White House reporter for Fox News, asked if the reason that people were protesting and leaving the country was because of communism. He explained by saying, Don't we know that the reason that people want to leave Cuba is because they don't like communism? Jen Psaki then responded by saying, I think we've been pretty clear that we think people are leaving Cuba, or not leaving Cuba, or protesting in the streets as well, because they are opposed to the oppression, to the mismanagement of the government in the country. She continued by saying, and we certainly support their right to protest. We support their effort to speak out against their treatment in Cuba. Now, this quote made a lot of people that I agree with on the right to absolutely freak out and say that because she didn't mention the word communism, then that means that she supports communism. I mean, she did say that the mismanagement of the government led to people to protest, which is communist. So she's technically calling out the communist government, even though she didn't really say the word communism yet. That comes later. The first big criticism of communism came from the President of the United States himself. That said, one of the greatest things I think he has ever said in his whole entire presidency so far. As in a press conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Biden said communism is a failed system, a universally failed system, and I don't see socialism as a very useful substitute, but that's another story. Seriously, this quote makes me absolutely so happy. However, ever since this statement was made, AOC has not stopped crying, and Bernie Sanders decided to escape into a commune in Vermont. I mean, it is just absolutely incredible to me as this statement calls out both of these evil ideologies, and Joe Biden agrees with me that communism sucks. I have never been more happy to agree 100,000% with Joe Biden on this issue. So because Joe Biden said this, Jen Psaki then followed along in his footsteps and said that the White House believes that communism is a failed ideology. So that's it. Everyone in the higher-ups of the government agrees. Communism sucks. Isn't that great? I guess we can just end this episode right now. Wait, hold on 1 minute. While Joe Biden and Jen Psaki are talking the talk that communism is a failed system, are they walking the walk when it comes to communism? Well, not exactly, as something very scary is going on in the government right now. As according to Politico, Biden-allied groups, including the Democratic National Committee, are planning to engage fact-checkers more aggressively and work with SMS carriers to dispel misinformation about vaccines that are sent over social media and, get this, text messages. You heard that right. Your private text messages could soon be censored or be watched by the government. Sounds like 1984. However, it gets worse though, as Jen Psaki again came out in a press conference and said that the White House is encouraging social media companies to alter their algorithms to promote quality information and for platforms to act in unison to ban certain people. The government wants to check your text messages and they want to check your Facebook, so then they can ban you from social media. And Jen Psaki also said that if you're banned from one social media platform, then you should be banned from all social media platforms. Isn't that a little bit scary? And doesn't this sound exactly like what the Cuban government was doing to their people when they cut off the internet and banned people from getting on Twitter and Facebook and other social media websites? It definitely seems like it. However, we are lucky as in our country, we have the First Amendment, and hopefully, the government won't break that. This whole censorship thing is very new. I mean, just recently, Joe Biden screamed at a reporter about how Facebook is killing people. And so that might have to be another topic for another time because we are already getting late into this episode. But it is definitely interesting to see the correlations between what Cuba is doing to their people and what America wants to do to our people. Yes, Cuba has been more authoritarian in their way, but if you give the government more power, more than likely they will turn more and more totalitarian, and hopefully that just won't happen and we won't even have to worry about that. In the end, communism sucks. It is a failed ideology and it is something that no one should want in our country. It leads to chaos, death, and destruction. It promotes dictators that rule over the people with an iron fist, as they demand that the people love the government. I am hopeful for right now that this censorship kick that the government is going on will not lead to the government being totalitarian or becoming more communistic. I also understand that there are going to be people, especially my leftist friends on Facebook, I see you over there, hey, how you doing, that are probably writing in the comments right now that I am wrong and that communism is a beautiful ideology and it has never been done before. And it's not real communism. And to them I say, cut the crap, no one believes you. If this is true, then tell me what North Korea is. Tell me what the Soviet Union was. Give me a successful communist country, or what a successful communist country would look like. Because as of right now, all that I see is failure, because communism sucks. And with that, I just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Dockery Docket. And until next time, like my mom always says, be good, be kind, be loving, goodbye.